these are going to be my top 5 exercises to specifically target the quads. So, first exercise, of course, is going to be squats. But that being said, squats, obviously it's a full body movement. And you need to perform squats in a particular way as to target the quads more so than hamstrings and glutes, etc., lower back, everything else. For me, personally, when I do a standard traditional squat with my feet flat on the ground, I feel as though my glutes and my hamstrings are very dominant when performing the movement. It's just naturally the muscles which want to engage more. My body wants to go through the path of least resistance, and due to my strengths, my flexibility, and just generally the way I'm put together in terms of my proportions, when I squat, it's very glute and hamstring dominant. So I need to manipulate this exercise, and many other people need to as well, in order to target the quads more so. So instead of just going through squats, I'm going to show you 3 variations of squats, different squats which you can do in order to target the quads more so than the hamstrings and glutes. So when performing the majority of these squat variations, you will need to elevate your heels. Now, the purpose of the heel elevation is to allow for maximum flexion at the knee. What that basically means is how much the knee is going to bend, how much the knee is going to move out in front of your foot. Now, before anyone wants to say anything about how knees going out in front of your feet is bad for you or bad for your knees, it's not, okay? It's just a myth. For those people that have bad knees, maybe it might be a little bit of an issue, but for the majority of people out there, knees going out in front of your feet is not a bad thing. So I don't want to hear people arguing about that. So, like any other squat, I would do what I would usually do, get it set up on my back. I would place my heels on top of the plates, make sure that I'm sturdy, and go down into the squat. Now, if we pause here, you can see, for me, I'm pushing my knees forward out in front of my feet, and I'm trying to keep my back as upright as possible. That is allowing me to place more tension upon the quads. Now, it's unlikely that I'll go for my 4 to 5 rep max on an exercise like this. I don't like the fact that my feet are not as stable as they could be if they were on flat ground. So the rep range is very unlikely to be less than 8. I'll often go for 10 plus reps on something like this. Slow the tempo right down and reduce the rest period. So as I go down into the squat, like I said, I'm trying to keep my back as upright as possible and to almost think about pushing my knees out in front of my feet and then bringing them back into the straight-legged position. The next variation of the squat is going to be the front squat. Now, for me personally, when I do a front squat, I like to wrap wrist straps around the bar for grip purposes. I'm not very flexible at the wrists, so I will hold the barbell in this kind of fashion. Heels are elevated once again, and as you can see at the bottom of the movement, it's a similar kind of position. It allows me to push my knees forward in front of my feet, and it allows me to keep my back relatively upright. One question you might ask is, how deep should you go on these squatting movements? Ideally, this is going to vary from each individual. For me personally, I usually tend to go to the point where my thighs are parallel to the ground. If I were to go any lower, I would be moving the tension away from my quads and onto my lower back. My lower back would tend to round and my tailbone would tuck underneath my torso. That's generally something you want to try and avoid, in my personal opinion. I feel as though tension is placed away from the target area. So I would recommend avoiding that tuck of the tailbone. And the third variation is the safety bar squat. I'm a big fan of this one. Not all gyms have it, but as you can see, because of the way the bar is set up, the weight is actually out in front of you, almost similar to a front squat. But as you can see, because my heels are flat on this exercise, my back is coming forward a little bit more so than it would do if my heels were to be elevated. So if I wanted to maximize the tension on my quads even more, I should technically perform this exercise with my heels elevated. But that being said, when I perform a safety bar squat such as this, I still feel it a lot on my quads, even if my feet are flat. So the fact that my feet are flat, I feel more comfortable, really pushing the weight to much heavier than, say, for example, the heel elevated variations.